Magic the Gathering is a game firmly rooted in the fantasy genre, and although what that means covers a wide spectrum, the key word is fantasy. So how can magic artists, world builders and writers create characters that fill this space, but still do their job of engaging the audience directly and holding a mirror up to their experiences? Today we talk to magic artist Magali Villeneuve about her work and the effort she takes in making fantasy grounded and honest. Hello, welcome to Magic the Flavouring, the Magic the Gathering podcast, where we talk about all things magic flavour design and lore. I'm your host, Andy Mann.
Hello, this is Nathan Cancel.
And today we have a very special guest, which we are very excited to talk to them. We have on the show today magic artist Magali Villeneuve. Hello, Magali, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, and bonjour, everybody.
Hi, we are so excited. I'm going to start the episode by basically gushing a little bit, and I'm sorry if it's embarrassing for you, but myself and Nathan have been such huge fans of your artwork ever since you started illustrating for the game. So it's a massive honour for us to have you on the show. And just first off, thank you so much for the art that you produce, I guess.
I'm really happy we don't have the camera on, because now I'm all blushing.
I can say even the laptop background from the laptop that I'm looking at now is actually Seraph of the Scales from your from your Ravnica Guilds of Ravnica set that you did, your Oars of Angel. Mm-hmm. So even right now I'm looking at a piece of your illustration, which is fantastic. I'm going to kick things off just with a kind of sort of general question. You've just started playing Magic in the past year, is that correct?
Yeah, that's true. Thanks to Magic Arena.
Oh, really? Yeah, that's fantastic to hear. Yeah. How have you been sort of playing Magic? Have you just been playing Magic Arena, or have you been playing in paper as well?
Well, mostly Arena, because I won't say I have no friends, but I have to play Magic, but they are not always available, for an actual game. And I gotta say that the really bright side with Magic Arena is that there is a tutorial for when you really have never kind of touched the game before. It's really helpful. It's really well made for people who really don't know how to play Magic. And it really allowed me to take the time to understand, to read the cards, and you are not playing against an actual human being. You're playing against a computer, let's say, and which is really cool for me, because I've always been ashamed that I was not able to play Magic. So Arena was really comfortable for me. It's just me and the game, and I have all the time I need to start learning. So yeah.
Excellent. I saw on Twitter that at the end of last year you got a box of Commander Legends, because you did a big post about that you had this box of Magic cards. Have you had the chance to open it up yet?
Yes, I did, and I even had the chance to play a little with the cards and all. But because friends came home with their decks, and also we could test a few games, paper games. But it's, for the time being, it's still not easy for me to play against a real player. I'm crushed. Yeah, I really want, my goal is to be able to play with the actual cards against people, and hopefully one day against, people during GPs, Magic Fest, when it's time again for us to meet in person. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. I've been really missing the chance to go to Magic Fest.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
So it's great that you started with Arena as well, because now obviously it's becoming, like, I don't know why we're plugging this, but obviously now it's becoming available on mobile, which is really good. It's because a lot of my friends have asked, like, oh, how do I get into the game? Because they see how obsessed I am, and I'm like, just download Arena, play Arena for 2 weeks, come back, and then we can start having a little bit of fun. Because there is that big, it feels like a drop off when you get into a game that's so big, and especially for yourself. Obviously, you've been designing cards for years now, so you know the diversity, all these different cards that must be out there. It must have been a little bit galling, I imagine.
Has your relationship to the game changed at all over the past year? And as like being an artist that didn't play, now that you're suddenly playing, like, do you have a different perspective on your art now that you're seeing it as game pieces rather than art pieces?
I wouldn't say it changed anything as far as creating art is concerned, but it really allowed me to see. And I'm not saying that because I'm working for Magic. It's really, I think it's an incredible game. I mean, I hope I will be able to explain it in English, but I'm really amazed by the atmosphere there is in the game. I've been able to test different decks, different colors, and each color has its really own specific atmosphere when you're playing with it. I don't know if I'm clear here, but
Oh no, yeah, for sure.
black is really not the same thing as playing red, etc. And it's so, I mean, it's so sophisticated, it's so interesting, and I've been really amazed by that. And I was so happy I would be able to, to get to that dimension of the game. And I understand now that I was really missing something not playing the game before. I could feel there was something special because, when I was talking to players and all, people wouldn't be so, I knew there was a good reason for people to love this game so much. Of course, Magic is something legendary, but it's only when you are playing yourself you can really feel what the game is really about. And that was a huge discovery for me. And now I can say, even if I'm really not playing really well or anything, I know that I love it because it's really it's one of a kind. It's a one of a kind game. I think there is nothing like that out there.
Yeah, for sure. That's such a great thing to hear because the atmosphere that you're talking about, or I suppose we would call it flavor, is how we would describe it. Yeah,
the word I was looking for.
yeah. I mean that's exactly what draws us into the game, and in fact, it's pretty much what this whole podcast is about, is exploring that side of things. So to hear that that's the thing that you engage with the most is amazing, and it very relatable to us.
It's also really interesting that the way the artwork kind of informs the aesthetic to play styles is really important from especially our point of view. Like myself and Andy, we really like how a card looks as well as how it plays. And it's funny that you, as an artist who have created a lot of the cards that give us an aesthetic as we play them, is starting to feel that yourself, because a lot of the reason of why we feel certain play styles and certain cards feel and play a certain way is because of the artwork that you put on there. So it's funny that it works both ways.
That's true. For example, there is one deck I especially love in Arena. It's an Izzet deck. I've always loved the Izzet guild anyway, but just for the looks, that's all I knew about them. But oh my god, the most fun I had in Arena so far was with this one, because now I understand better the looks of the Izzet, and I know what they are about in the game, and I think that's what I prefer so far. There is this little, a little crazy and clever, and I love that. It's fantastic. And
the crazy scientists,
yes,
that's amazing.
That just makes me think of the art cover that you did for the Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, the D&D accompaniment. Has an Izzet mage with all the lightning and everything. So yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Cool. That's just so great to hear. Can I just ask, what is your background as an artist? Because your range isn't just confined to Magic the Gathering as a commercial artist. You have artwork that spans so many different IPs. So we have things like D&D, Star Wars, The Witcher, Legend of the Five Rings, Lord of the Rings you do artwork for as well, and Warhammer. Was that what you wanted to get into as an artist, or how did you find yourself in this role?
When I started as a professional, I maybe you know that already, but I'm completely self-taught. And
Mm.
so when I started, I really started with the tiniest publishing houses in France you can possibly imagine. I mean, it was almost non-existent structures. So, but you have to start somewhere, and I was really aware you could not, I had to adapt my clients to what I was really able to do at that time. So my first goal was to illustrate book covers, because what led me to illustration was when I first discovered my first fantasy book. I was like 18 at that time, and it was The Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan.
Oh, what a fantastic book.
Yes, I agree. And and yes, that's when I discovered those books that I really decided what I wanted to do, and I wanted to illustrate fantasy books. So that was my first goal. So for a few years, that's what I did in France first. And what really brought my career to another level was when I decided I would start to send portfolios in the US, because I was aware that it's not really easy as a fantasy illustrator to make it in France. There's not enough
Mm.
work to do. So I was aware I had to cross the ocean kind of to make a living. So I remember one day I was in a bookshop, and I found an art book, um, published mostly. Um, it was mostly about a Game of Thrones illustrations made for the Fantasy Flight game, living card game.
Hmm.
And when I looked at the illustration, I knew about Game of Thrones. It was, well before the TV
The
show, right?
craze,
So
yeah.
it was really about the books. And that was an IP I really wanted to work for. And I went like, I'd like to give it a try. So yeah, I sent a portfolio, not really knowing what would, what would happen after that. But I was hired immediately. I was over the moon. I still remember that day, and it was few years ago, but I still remember that day. And I think I made, I'm not lying, hundreds of illustrations for Fantasy Flight.
Oh, wow.
I first started with Game of Thrones, and then I was hired to create the looks. I was really part of the starting group of the Lord of the Rings game they published, and then Star Wars, and then Warhammer, and etc., etc. And all the work I did for those few years really, that's really when my career started, because that's how it works. You work for one company, and then another art director from another company sees what you're doing, and and little by little you're building your career that way. And as far as magic is concerned, I really waited for the longest time to send my portfolio to Wizards of the Coast, because since I was a teenager back in high school, I knew about magic, because I could
Mm.
see the guys playing it, and I really didn't understand anything to the game, of course, at the time, but I already was really drawn to the illustrations. And but for me, it was another world. It was something you could only dream of. So yeah, I waited a long time to send my portfolio, until I really started feeling I was ready, and then I gave it a try, and I was hired immediately too. So it was it was
Oh, wow.
cool. But for me, it was really, and still today, it's really something. You, you could think, a magic artist would be, uh, like, okay, it's everyday life for me. It's completely normal to be making art for Magic and all that. As far as I'm concerned, it's really not like that. I mean, I've been working for them for years now, and I'm still like, is this real life? Yeah, and it's still incredible for me to that I've been able to make it to this IP in particular. Yeah.
That's so incredible to hear. That's such a cool journey, and the fact that you're still so invested and like bright-eyed about it is really cool to hear.
Maybe it's because I am self-taught, and you always have that feeling that you are a little out of place when you're not coming from, when you don't have the same background as many other artists who've been in schools and to art lessons and all, which is absolutely not my case. So that's why even today I feel really lucky and also proud that I've been able, to fight hard enough to make my way through all this, because it's not been easy, but it's, I mean, so worth it now. So yeah, maybe
you need
that's
to give yourself a graduation.
Mm.
Give yourself a little hat and everything. It'd be fantastic.
But as you say, you've been working in this game now for quite some time, despite the fact that you feel sort of still very fresh in it. I think, obviously, commissions and release of cards don't always sync up, as we've learned speaking to Magic artists. But the first cards that were released with your artwork on it were all the way back in the original Theros block, where you did about 2 or 3 cards. But it wasn't till the next set, the Tarkir block, where suddenly your style, I think, started to really come through. Because you were given, I think you still had 4 commissions in the Khans of Tarkir block, from what I can see, and then a couple in the next sets. But what struck me was that you were so quickly picked up upon to do prominent characters in the game. Like you're the first person to do, you did Narset was a character, and the first 3 cards to have this prominent like front-facing character was all your artwork, and that trend seems to have continued on. Like, do you see yourself as being a go-to artist for these characters, and like, how do you feel about that?
I remember when I was hired for Tarkir, I remember back then the art director was Jeremy Jarvis. And I especially remember the moment when I was commissioned Planeswalker Narset. Because even back then I knew what Planeswalker was. So I remember Jeremy told me in his email, he said, okay, I'm gonna commission something special to you. It's gonna be a Planeswalker, so you have to know that the Planeswalker is something special in Magic. And to put it in a nutshell, though it wasn't said this way, but he was telling me, okay, don't mess up with
Don't fuck up. Get this right.
with this card. And it just for that it was challenging. But there was another challenge inside. The challenge was that I had to create the character's costume as a walker. Of course, I could find inspiration in the world guide. We always have a world guide. And so, I was, I wouldn't say I was surprised, because I always knew my main skill in illustration was characters. And
you don't have any land cards as far as I can see in the game.
The truth is, I'm not really good at environments. Of course, there are environments behind my characters and all, but it's a pretty logical choice for an art director in Magic to go to a guy who's going to be really good at environments to paint an environment, and to go to someone who's good at characters to paint a character. They don't have time to lose. So absolutely. I completely understand that, and I'm not frustrated at all about that either. So, and so yes, I thought that I wasn't surprised to be given a character, but such an important character already. It was really something. Of course, it was a special moment. It was, that type of moment believe it or not, but it's true. With my husband, we always tend to celebrate milestones in my career.
Mm.
I did celebrate the moment I had this first planeswalker. So what does it mean, celebrate? Like, yay, champagne, something like that. It's still a celebration.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
absolutely.
Did the artwork for the Planeswalker version of Narset get commissioned to you before or after the creature card? And then there's also an enchantment which you did, which shows Narset, called Quiet Contemplation, where she's meditating.
It was after.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just really cool to me to see that just you took complete artistic ownership of this character as it was commissioned to you,
Yeah.
and that this character journeyed from like through different sets and through different sort of modes of being was given to you to explore, and that's happened a couple of times with different characters throughout Magic.
Yeah,
That must be a very cool thing to explore through your artwork.
and I think that's really something. I mean, that's something really cool with Wizards of the Coast art directors. There's really, they're not just, okay, this guy, let's give him this, but there is something. They are really trying to create something. They are really trying to build something, um, and to have us involved. We're not just making an illustration. We are trying to keep the game um, growing and evolving through the years. And get they know how to give us the feeling that we are part of something. You know what I mean? That we are not just one freelancer. They are trying to. Yeah, I'm having a hard time
Well,
explaining.
it's like a collection, isn't it? Like world building throughout multiple people.
Yeah, and I think that's really that's a good way to keep people interested in their work. Not having the feeling that we could be so easily. Of course, we can all be easily replaced. That's not what I mean, but I think
Sure.
as we are working for them, they are trying to make us feel like they care for us, and it's they have a lot of work. So I think it's really cool coming from them that they still have that kind of kindness towards us.
Sure. Time and again, when we speak to artists or when we speak to people who are involved in the kind of world building side of the game, time and again, we hear that the art directors for Wizards of the Coast and Magic specifically are some of the most collaborative and sort of generous people in the workplace. And this seems to be like on track with that. How did you feel going back to Narset for War of the Spark? Because you did yet another Planeswalker card for that character, but there was such a big gap of time. Did you feel that when you were doing that illustration, or did you kind of know what you wanted to do with the character?
No, not really, because Narset is what I would call my comfort zone.
Sure.
So yes, it's just a pleasure for me to get to work on her again, and even more so that through the years, from the moment when she first was developed in Tarkir to the moment when I got to paint her again, I had the occasion to go to Magic Fest and to meet players, and I could realize how important this character could be for some players, because you know that, of course you do, that Narset is autistic. Is that
Yes. Yeah.
information? And I had a few occasions to talk with parents of autistic children who came to me to have the card signed, and we started talking a little, and they told me, okay, I have to thank you for painting this character because my daughter is like Narset. It's wonderful for me to see such beautiful and strong um, illustration of this character, so I could show my daughter that you can be a hero in a way. See this character, she's like you, but she's still beautiful and strong and powerful and all. And it was I had a few really emotional moments like that where I could realize that. I think that's when I realized that magic is not. It's a game, but it's something. It's a little something more
It's
for
a
me.
community.
Yes,
It's a family for some people. Yeah.
absolutely. And that's also why I'm always trying to be um, as involved, not to
Mm.
lose um, not to lose sight of how that I'm really making something important for many people. So I'm trying to be really respectful towards players and towards the game and all. I have no reason not to be, but I really want people to feel, whether it be when I'm talking with them in Magic Fest or on Twitter and all,
Mm.
trying to show something really positive. To um, it's not just a job for me, So I want to show people that I care. Yes.
That's so cool to hear. That's really cool, and it speaks volumes to the game at large that this kind of connection between different people involved in the game can happen.
Mm.
You mentioned just something a while ago when you were talking about designing Narset, that you had to design her costume, which obviously all artists do. But something which I think the community has kind of come out in force with is that your artwork seems to be a favorite amongst many different cosplayers,
Mm.
and that they create physical versions of your work. I know that you especially work closely with the cosplayer Manju Elise. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, and it's a rarity. It still does happen, but it's a rarity that your cosplayer community also picks costumes that you've designed for non-creature cards. So I know that the mage from the card Exert Influence has been cosplayed. I know that Void Mage is a character that's been cosplayed, and they're not a legendary creature or anything like that. But obviously, name any character that you've done, there's a cosplay out there for it. Like, how does that feel, seeing your work become physical reality? Because again, you are a favorite amongst these creative people.
That's also the type of things you dream of, but really don't really believe when it actually. It really does mean something coming from a cosplayer to choose a character and to say, okay, I'm gonna spend countless hours working on that. And as far as my costumes are concerned, I know that I may be like, the devil's child for players, because I know I have really sophisticated costumes. It's not always easy to translate.
No, they're not simple.
They're not, because I don't like simple costumes. That's how I am. And so for me, it's really a honor when I just thinking someone at some point decided you know, to look closely at the illustration and would be willing to wear it, because this also means something when a cosplayer decides um, to create the costumes. That's because she or he wants to be the character. So for me, it also means something. It means that maybe in the illustration there was something shining through, making them feel like becoming a little like that. So it's a huge compliment for me. And yeah, you're really you're absolutely right when you say that it's not just famous planeswalkers or characters. I've seen cosplayers make costumes out of cards I thought everyone had completely forgotten. So it's for me, I'm always amazed when I see them, especially in real life. I'm like, um, I'm such a fangirl when I see a cosplayer. Oh my god, can I have a picture with you? It's I'm like that all the time. I'm fangirling over my own, not my own illustrations, but the IP I'm working for.
Yeah, of course.
I cannot help it.
Which is only going to get worse now that you're playing, just so you know.
Yes.
It doesn't get easier.
It's not really gonna get to that. It's gonna get worse.
Exactly.
One of the cards that we recently were very impressed with and really sparked a lot of inspiration in us, and in fact, Nathan did a whole deck tech on it, was your card, Naeth of the Dire Hunt, which is, from the Jumpstart set. And we were lucky to catch it, because obviously Twitter moves so quickly. But Jay and Ellie from the Vorthos cast on Twitter asked you whether you'd based any of the character design on the Studio Ghibli film Princess Mononoke. And you said that you did, in fact, draw inspiration from it.
Yeah.
And it's definitely a film that both me and Nathan, I mean, Nathan, obviously, you can correct me here, but like that's a big film influence for us in our kind of like
Ghibli's like top of the list.
Taste. Yeah, exactly. Like, are you a big Studio Ghibli fan in general, or like where else do you pull these kind of aesthetic ideas from?
It's hard for me to say that I'm a fan of anything, because that's true. I really can find inspiration about anywhere. There are lots of things I love, so I wouldn't say anything in particular, but there are lots of, would it be movies or games or whatever, that inspire me. Princess Mononoke was always, it's a huge favorite for me as far as animated movies are concerned, because what I didn't say previously was that before deciding I would be a book illustrator, my first the first thing I really wanted to do in the art field was working for animated movie, being an animator. For Disney, if possible. But so I've always been really interested in the animation art. So of course, when I saw Princess Mononoke long time ago, because I it was, I was in a state of shock. It was something, uh, I think that's even the first Japanese animation movie I ever saw at that time. I was really into Disney at that moment, so I was more into the American side of that part. But thanks to this movie,
very change of pace, isn't it? Going to Princess Mononoke from Disney, it's a bit different.
That's when I really discovered how different it was, and how, yes, it was a huge discovery for me. And that card was the big occasion for me to, to
explore it.
Yeah. And I was really happy I was able to do that, because, in general, and I think that's not a good thing. Now I'm trying to do that more often. I don't always dare put that kind of influences in my illustrations. I tend to be maybe a little bit too neutral to my own taste. So now I'm trying to let my influences shine through more than I did the past few years. And I think that card in particular was kind of a start for me. Like, I mean, it was so obvious in that card, but because I dared make it obvious. And I gotta say that I'm really happy you're talking about that one, because when you are producing so many illustrations, you always have favorites, of course. And this one is really one that I'm not always really happy with my work. I gotta say that it's hard for me to say, yeah, I like this illustration. In general, I like my illustrations for 10 minutes, and then 10 minutes later, I hate them. So
the plight of an artist.
Yeah. But this one, I can still look at it and don't feel like I have to run away. So yeah, I like
That's
it.
interesting, because it's more understated as well compared to some of your others, say Chandra or Rashmi, going for ones that are quite obvious to players. They have a little bit more going on. There's a bit more filigree. Obviously with Chandra, you've got the fire. With Naeth, there's not so much, and it's strange because I prefer artists when they go understated, because it tends to feel a little bit more honest. And I think that's why Naeth works so well. The fact you were able to bring something you love into the game,
Yeah.
it shows within the artwork. And it's a good thing you do, because so many people love Princess Mononoke, and now you've given them a chance to enjoy that within Magic, which is really important. And it gave us a whole hour and a half of conversation to talk about.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm really happy you did.
So yeah, it's really lovely to hear that you prefer that style as well. The card didn't need that in any way. Nothing in the cards kind of says that it needed to be like that as well. So I'm really happy that you took the inspiration to do that yourself, instead of having to be encouraged to.
Yeah, it seems like a very personal choice, which really shows through.
Yeah,
Which is really, really cool.
It was a type of card, but it was really possible to do that because it happens more with legendaries when the art director asks us to, okay, you're gonna go and create this character. It's a never seen before character, so there is a lot of room for exploration and all. All I knew about this one was it was a girl with a wolf. you know so starting from that, anything could happen. So that's also probably why I felt more at ease to explore different things. When you get make a new version of Chandra or Jace or whoever, you feel like you at least that's how I tend to think. I do not dare go too far because they existed before, and I think that people want to recognize them as much as possible. You cannot stray too far, from what the character really is at first. But it's easier for that type of legendary creatures to show more of your own personality through it.
That's an interesting thing, because I think writers struggle with this, with writing the same character, having the same voice, and they tend to, in our experience, get that quote unquote wrong sometimes. With artists, it must be much more difficult, because obviously it's a statement, it's a single look at a character, and as you say, if you change or deviate too much, it stops feeling like that character. So yeah, it's an interesting space that you've only have so much flexibility. Which is, it's an interesting thing.
Can you talk to us about something we've always really wondered about on the show, is your work on the Ravnica sets, the most recent Ravnica sets. And I think this spawned from a conversation we had with you when we met you at Magic Fest London. We were in the card signing queue, and we had you sign some cards for us amongst the hundreds of thousands of other people you probably had to sign cards for that week. And we spoke about your work on Ravnica, the latest Ravnica sets, because it was around the time of War of the Spark that Magic Fest was happening. And it seemed to us, at least, that your influence, because you didn't illustrate that many cards for those sets, but the ones that you did illustrate, where a lot of the Vraska cards, the Golgari leader, and Taser Karlov, the Orzhov leader, those cards seem to inform the look and style of the rest of those guilds in that set. How much influence and how much work did you do on that set in terms of it stylistically and visually?
Well, for the Ravnica set, I got to work on the world guide, which means I was part of the concept push team for this set, where we got to kind of redesign the guilds. They existed before, but they needed new, with different looks and all. And from the very first days of the concept push, it appeared really clearly that I really had something going on with the Golgaris, because when you get to work on a concept push with wizards, they are not hiring you to tell you, okay, we hired you to work on the Golgaris. They are explaining everything they need. So in the case of Ravnica, they told us they needed different looks for all the guilds. So there had to be a big redesign work for almost all of the guilds, and we could go where our hearts led us at that moment. And I was immediately drawn to the Golgari because the art brief for this guild was really interesting to me, and so I immediately started working on that. And I think I almost immediately found the you know the new thing for them.
Sure.
The fungus and all going on. And of course it wasn't just me, but I was really I spent so much time working on that guild that I made lots of designs for them. So and after that, at the end of the concept push, when I got back home, I was hired to do something, um, like the sequel of what I worked on. That is, they asked me to design Veraska's new costume, inspired from the work I had done for the rest of the guild. So I redesigned her, which is the costume design you can see on the Golgari Queen.
With the accent on the shoulder and everything.
Yeah, it's more like a sort of like high couture like fashion, which previously the Golgaris had been, because they're the underclass, they're the undercity guild, so everything is dirt and grime and rot and ruin. But with this new character of Vraska being the Golgari Queen, and you also drew her on Vraska Regal Gorgon, and again actually an Undercity Uprising, you did so much work. Her influences seem to make them high fashion, but still with that kind of growth aesthetic.
Exactly. That's exactly what the art direction we had for that guild. What immediately spoke to me was when it was Mark Winters was art directing this concept push, and he only had to pronounce 2 words for me to get whoa, like that. It was Alexander McQueen, and and to me say, okay, I don't need anything more. I know where we are going here.
Yeah.
So yes, it doesn't take a lot to spark an artist's interest sometimes, and that's you absolutely got it. It's high fashion looks we have going on here. They have to look really ready to go on the catwalk. That's
exactly, yeah. You get that feeling a lot. It made the Golgari feel like they were stepping up, and it reinvigorated them, I think, as a guild.
That was also the challenge, because it could be also easy to go too far on the fashion side. There is something that's really dear to me when it comes to costume design. I want my costumes to look believable. I mean, when you are designing a character's outfit, whether it be a dress or an armor or something like that, to me it's important to feel that the character can actually move and actually fight or whatever.
Practical.
Exactly. So it was also part of the challenge to make them look, because if I had been too far on, high fashion with something really super sophisticated, it would have felt out of place, so that was, a balance I had to find here. And to finish the story about that, when I finished the Veraska's design, after that, the art director was kind enough to tell me, okay, now we're going to give you the Planeswalker cards. They don't have to, because it's not always the case. Sometimes you get to design a character and it's another artist working on the actual card and all. But I thought that maybe they knew that I was really, involved in that one. So I was so happy to get the Planeswalker cards. I had so much fun on these.
And they liked it so much, they went, do 2. You get 2 of them.
You get 2 of them.
Okay, take care of that.
Yeah, don't worry, I've got so many extra illustrations out there. I've got you covered.
I mean, it is a testament to your work, again, talking about things like cosplayers and how the community perceives these characters, because you also did Taser Karlov in the next set, so Ramka allegiance,
Mhm.
who was part of the Orzhov Guild. And this isn't a new character or a new guild even, and the look for that guild wasn't even hugely radicalized. But now the Taser Karlov look for that character, whenever anyone thinks of that character,
It's
is the one
yours.
that people jump to. It's your one, despite it being one of the later versions of this character. So it's very, very cool to
As
see.
far as Tessa is concerned, there was a really um, um, there was a really precise reference for that. What they really wanted me to do was just to that the costume would be a little more modest than it
Hmm.
was at first. So that's really I adapted the original design rather than really redesigned the character. I had a few details and all, but that was not quite the same work as on the Golgari Guild, for example. It was more about giving a more modern look to the character, and I was really, sometimes it's not really, it's not always easy to know beforehand what the player's reaction is going to be when
Hmm.
a character new card comes out, and I've often been surprised by people's reactions. Sometimes, I expected lots of reactions and people kind of don't really care. And sometimes I don't expect much from an illustration and it's like a huge wave. The best example I have for that, well, Tesa is a good
Hmm.
example, but there is another one, especially is the Seraph of the Scales.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I remember I painted this illustration in a really rough time in my career. I was really overworked and I was, I really tired and I had the feeling that I was spinning my wheels for nothing. And as I said, really not a good time for me. And I really had a hard time completing that illustration. And I was like, oh my God, I hope it's gonna be good enough. So I really thought this card would go totally unnoticed. I'm also aware that it's not just about the illustration. I also
Hmm.
know it's mostly about what the card is going to do, but it's even better when the card is good and when the illustration does match the
Mm.
people's interest.
I mean, I opened up that card as my pre-release promo, so I was at the pre-release for that. I was with you, Nathan, obviously,
Indeed.
and that was my card, my special, like, oh, you got this out of the box card, and I was absolutely thrilled with it as a card and as an art piece as well. I can tell you.
Mm. It's funny you say that because that's the third artist we've spoken to that has said that art that we really like was when they were under pressure or
Yes.
not necessarily feeling their best or feeling very confident. And it's funny that tends to be a trend of when artists feel down about a certain art or feel they didn't have enough time to get it exactly how they wanted, that those are the ones that turn out almost better than the ones that you have.
Well, maybe that's us, Nathan. Maybe we're just really sadistic.
So
I mean, I'm not going to deny that.
Yeah, for sure. Something we wanted to talk to you about, and it's something that we talk to a lot of artists about. This is a big question that I personally am very invested in, and it's your personal view on fantasy art, whether that's just in gaming or as the kind of niche of art that it is. Like, what are your thoughts and feelings on the current state of fantasy art, either aesthetically or as an industry? And where would you like to see it evolve and go to? Or do you think we're already kind of in a nice place? Like, what's your current feelings and thoughts on fantasy art in general?
I think we are in a pretty good place. I always tend to compare today's fantasy art to what it's been in the 90s or even the early how do you say that?
2000s.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The noughties, I think they're called.
Yeah.
naughty, yes.
Which sounds weird.
Because there is one side of the fantasy art that I really don't like, and I think it's getting old now, is the when it looks too heroic fantasy with really bulky guys and
Sure.
girls in not really practical.
Skimpy outfits,
Yes.
yeah.
It may sound like something that's been said countless times, but I think it's really something we really have to get rid of, please.
Hmm. It's the Conan the Barbarian look.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know exactly what you mean. The old, like, almost glam rock kind of look to
Mm.
fantasy. Yeah.
It's really getting old, and I think it doesn't. It's especially today. It wouldn't do any good to fantasy art to keep on going that way, because
Mhm.
as an artist today, you can really feel how important it is for people to be able to identify to the illustrations. So you have to be careful to, you know, I was talking about believable things previously,
Mhm.
and it's really important for me to make my characters and my art in general look believable, something people can identify to, and so it's maybe it starts with tiny details like believable armors for ladies. I mean,
Mhm.
it's
Mm.
not like something ordinary, but armors, please, God.
Yeah, just not huge boob armor that only protects the upper body.
We've been
Mhm.
through that. I mean, I can understand that it was something cool at one moment, but I think we've seen so many versions of that we have to
Sure.
do something. And it's also true for men. I mean, it's not just only for female characters, it's also true for male characters. You have to, why wouldn't they be, not overly muscular or something like that? I mean, if I were a guy, I would love to see a normal looking boy sometimes.
Yep.
Yeah, love handles, maybe a bit of a belly. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, representation. Well, this is why Thor was so good for the latest Marvel franchise, because he took a character that everyone was like, I can't look like that, and they made him look like a lot of people look, and it's good. It's representation. Yeah, exactly.
And I think we've been through a really important times for fantasy. For example, the TV show Game of Thrones.
Mm,
He um, showed to the world, and when I say the world, I mean even people who were not interested in the fantasy genre before, that it's not just about dragons and and swords and blah 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 and elves
Mm.
and things like that. It's mainly maybe about people,
yeah.
because such IPs, and it's also true for Star Wars or The Witcher or whatever you like. What do people really like about that? It's the characters and what they go through and who they are, and and I think that's now it's the main focus, I think, for fantasy, is to show that fantasy IPs really have something to tell beyond simple adventures with creatures and magical spells and all.
Mm,
And at least that's what I learned through my career,
mm,
that uh, at the end, the main comments I'm getting about my illustration is, I really like this character and her
mm,
expression, and how, she seems to be really like this or really like that, and I can identify to this character and all, and I get a feeling that I can feel what she's going through, and
mm,
you can feel that people are looking for that. Uh,
For
so
sure.
yeah, and I think it's a more mature, yes, approach of what it's been, because and maybe also I have that point of view because I live in France, and I gotta say that in France, fantasy, etc., etc., is not really seen as it should be. It's still kind of seen as something for kids or
kids. Oh,
teenagers,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Um, so yes, I think Game of Thrones helped improve that a little, but now Game of Thrones is over, so we need something else.
Yeah.
And
To have
For
a
sure.
maturity. Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
It's funny that you talk about that representation and kind of the evolution of characters in fantasy is so important, because of course, in the most recent set that's being spoiled for players right now, which is Kaldheim. And obviously, you must have worked on illustrations, hopefully, that aren't revealed to us yet, and maybe even for sets a year down the line. But you've had 2 illustrations so far spoiled for Kaldheim, and one of them was a spell with the new Planeswalker Nico Aris on it, who is the first non-binary Planeswalker. And their character is obviously new to Magic and offers a new range of diversity. And you yourself have had a hand in that, doing an art for their character, which is fantastic.
Yeah. And I think, it's really interesting because, there is a place for everyone in fantasy. That's the bright side of that.
That's the point, right?
All kind of people can be a hero at some point. So now it's just, it's just about making it feel natural. I'm not really. I don't really like it when you can feel, and sometimes that's something you can feel in TV shows or something like that. Sometimes it doesn't feel really natural. It's like they are shouting, "Okay, look, we have an Asian hero here." Oh, it's something really original.
Shoehorn it in, put a token gesture. Yeah,
I think it doesn't have to be something to make your show or whatever be, cool and modern or anything. No, it's just the way it is. So can we just make it look normal?
Normal, exactly. Normalize it, precisely.
Yes, yeah. I think that's the next step for fantasy, and not just fantasy besides, but
just our society in general.
It's not a character trait to be homosexual or non-binary. That's part of who you are, and it's part of the world, so it should be a part of our fantasy world as well.
For sure. Well, this has been absolutely fantastic. I think we're just about running out of time. Magali, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us today. It's been an absolute joy.
Well, again, thank you for having me, and I really hope I was understandable.
Oh no, absolutely. Probably more than we were.
Yeah, you're more eloquent in your words than we've ever been, so that's absolutely fine.
I'm going to believe you.
If you have any sort of online presence that you want people to know about, or if you have any places that you want people to see your work who maybe don't necessarily play the games, where can people find you?
Well, you can find me on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, of course. And I have my website, www.magalivilleneuve.com.
We will link everything in our description box below as well, so people can follow the links down there. You can find us on Twitter, guys, at mtflavouring. Our email is mtflavouring@gmail.com. My personal Twitter is at AndyManface. Nathan's, yours is?
At the Fox in the Moon.
A little bit of a reminder for our YouTube channel. We've recently started doing 2 minutes or less lore videos called Lore Shots, where we explore the lore behind your favourite commanders. So go check those out and show the love.
I'm now imagining it as a drinking game.
It is a bit of a drinking game, yeah. Nathan, do you have anything else final to say?
No, thank you so much for coming on, Magali. I look forward to illustrating more and more characters going forwards. You've done a fantastic job of doing characters I've known for years and new characters to explore. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to your work over the next few years.
Thank you. And I really hope you will like what's coming next.
I'd be surprised if we don't.
Sure we will, yeah. We'll be gushing about it. We'll probably be annoying you incessantly on Twitter, tweeting at you about your work. So yeah.
We usually we could have fanboyed much harder, trust us. We have a lot of praise.
Excellent. Well, all that remains for me to say then, guys, is thank you so much for listening. This has been Magic the Flavouring.
We'll see you soon.